Okay, so we seem to be filming. We'll see how much we can fit in there. But hello, Liz. How are you going today?
Fine, thanks, Kate.
Thank you for meeting me again this week. Nice bright start. Just for the purpose of the tape again, thank you for agreeing to be filmed for this assessment exercise today.
No problems.
Excellent. So we didn't bother filming the portfolio of evidence, which we've just completed, which was the other assessment tool for this unit. Again, we're just going to go through a whole lot of that legalese important information, and then we will get started on to the next assessment, which is your oral questionnaire today. Okay?
Sure.
Again, the film will only be used to review for my assessment and review and professional development, nothing further. And you are working here as the administrative assistant at Queanbeyan High School, time sharing with Jen Tubman. You have lots of previous experience, you're doing really well in this job, and we're just going to finalise your assessments today in your application for recognition of prior learning. Again, Gillian Archer is the school administrative manager, so she is the go-to person if we see any risks or hazards which we identify during this assessment today.
Yeah.
And if we hear the fire alarm or the evacuation bell, we go out this door here and just into the courtyard over there, which
Sure.
I know you're familiar with. You have that. You've been working here. So this is your workspace. Nice, safe environment with your perfectly suited chair, as we discussed before, as per the ergonomic policy.
Yes.
And we started this morning at 9. We've already been through your portfolio of evidence, which you've submitted for the other half of this assessment. And thank you. That was a very comprehensive package, and it was really well compiled and presented. And that supporting evidence is sufficient and met all of the principles of assessment and all of the rules of evidence. So you were granted recognition of prior learning for that performance part of that this morning. And that is, again, in recognition of prior learning for the unit of competency BSB CMM 201, communicate in the workplace. So now we'll move into the final assessment for this unit, and I'll ask you 3 questions, basically just to assess your knowledge in workplace communications using the oral questionnaire assessment instrument, which I gave to you before and we reviewed previously. I've also just given you a little bit of time to compile your ideas and thoughts. I see you've got some notes here. Please feel free to refer to anything in your notes or in your portfolio of evidence as examples in reference to this assessment to assist you in any way you need. Also, please make sure that you answer the question as completely as you can. If there are multiple parts to that question, I'll ask them all separately. And if I just need a little bit more detail, I'll tease that from you as well, with additional questions, just to make sure that we cover off on all the criteria included in that.
Sure.
And I'll be writing notes as we go, don't freak out. That's part of that assessment, just so that I can ensure that we've covered off on each of those points. You'll be given enough time to answer all of the questions. If you don't understand something or you would like a little bit more clarification, please feel free to just ask me. I'm here to support you through all of this. So as I say, I'll check off your answers. I have your responses, because I have some benchmark answers about what we actually need for this role here and for the unit of competency for this unit. As with the previous assessment 2 that we've just completed, I'll let you know the outcome of my assessment decisions based on the evidence you submit or you respond to me during this questioning. And I will tell you straight away whether or not that is sufficient to meet the recognition of prior learning requirements for this unit. So you'll know the outcomes of today's assessment as soon as we finish.
Oh, good.
Yep. Then the only other thing is I will send you out then, if you are successful in meeting these criteria and requirements, I'll send you out a statement of attainment. All your training documentation and assessment records will go to Gillian Archer, and they'll be held on your personnel file here, and your training records, and same at Training Solution will keep a copy of all those files as well. Okay. Right, that's pretty much it. Feeling ready? You ready to begin? Okay, excellent. So the first question today is, could you please identify some organisational policies, plans or procedures which you have worked with, detailing organisational standards for workplace communications? You can either talk about your current role here, or I know you have probably more experience in other roles since you're only new here. You can definitely use anything from your previous work history as well.
Well, given that in my work here, I answer the phone, there are very good guidelines for the manner in which we do that, and how to deal with the customers face to face, in terms of how we answer the phone, identify ourselves, respond to their questions, and give the relevant information that they want, or if we don't have it, who to then go on and speak to.
Yep. Excellent, and that's easy to follow.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, nice and clear.
Yes.
The privacy policy and the procedures and protocols that go with that are very much like others that I've worked with in other areas before I came here. Within a school, I think very important, and written up very well, I thought.
Oh, that's good. So you've familiarised yourself with those processes, the policies, obviously, here as part of your induction and your work.
Yeah, it's easy to maybe, when you're not at work, to talk out of school, so it's just good to keep it in the head, not to, in a small community, those sorts of things.
Yeah, of course. Excellent. So, privacy and work at work, yep. And you've ticked off a couple of those there. Yes. Any more? Do you have one more example, perhaps, of that?
Well, probably risk management, given a school, and the workplace health and safety policies and procedures. Again, very similar. I mean, requisite for each, a school's not that much different from the community where I was before. And so with students and or with the clients that I used to work with, risk management was always, spoken of in terms of the dignity of it, I suppose, but it always had to be very relevant to the situation you're in and you as a worker, how you supported that person. And the policies and the procedures were there to support you to follow, and how to use them if you needed to write up a hazard or an incident that had occurred.
So how to communicate those in the appropriate format in the workplace as well. Yeah.
Yes, and easily findable.
Yeah, well that's the really big thing, isn't it? It's okay to have all these policies, but if you can't access them, well...
Yes.
So I can see that you have accessed those, and you have those folders here with you today, a few of the administrative policies and the communication policy there, just in that yellow folder.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. And as we discussed, you've obviously already put some of those policies into action with applying the ergonomic policy and the posture at work here with your new chairs and all of that.
Yes.
And where can you find... Oh, so you've already got these hard copy folders with those there.
Yes, I'm familiar with the policies and the procedures and know where to find them.
Okay, so question number 2. We have covered off on all of that. You've identified a number of different organisational policies relating to the communications and how you have access to those. So that is covered off all those requirements. Question number 2, could you describe some of the different communication styles which you might use at your job, and which situations it might be appropriate to use different communication styles?
Yes, well, I would say with oral communication, with probably more formal with the telephone. You're identifying yourself, you're letting people know where you are, how you can help them, what their inquiries are. Face-to-face interactions probably depends on whom you're speaking, student or colleague, principal, someone from outside the school. So I would probably just be very aware of that and use the language that was appropriate for imparting whatever information was necessary.
Yeah, excellent.
Or receiving it too.
So that's the oral communication and the telephone, the face-to-face communications. Are there any other main forms of communication which you use? I need 3 examples for this assessment.
Well, there's the written communication with documents, letters, emails, reports. Well, they all deal with different things in many ways. I mean, an email, it's as legitimate and legal as anything else, but it's quick, gets out there. Documents and letters are similarly provide the necessary paper trails, different information, obviously, and perhaps important just to know which one to use related to whatever the issue is.
Yeah, so case by case basis,
Yes.
you will determine which form of communication is probably best in
like a report could be just dot points, for example, but a letter would be more, start with dear sir, end up with respectfully yours, that sort of thing.
Yes, yep. So that's using appropriate formats and things for your job and your workplace and your role. Excellent. Well, again, I think that has definitely covered off on at least 3 examples. So thank you. We're compliant with that question as well. So for the final question, can you think about or discuss some barriers to communication which you may have experienced in your previous work or here already at Queanbeyan High School? Maybe, what some of these barriers could be and any ways which you have, tried to overcome them, any strategies you've employed to make the communication more effective.
I haven't really dealt with anything particularly in the short time I've been here, but certainly in my past work, working with clients in the community, and certainly with a lot of people being older or disabled, come across just hearing difficulties, for example. Vision impairment would be another one. Certainly age in itself. I've been young or older, and just having to you be skilled in terms of how you were able to help that person deal with what needed to be done. I mean, sometimes a person with hearing difficulty might have the hearing aid, but sometimes even that could be an issue if you're in a loud, cafe, loud place. And so, how you present yourself, how you express yourself with your hands often will get you out of trouble that way.
Yes.
Vision impairment, you're out helping somebody shop, for example, so very important to be able to let them know what products were there in front of them, knowing which ones they would choose. And I would say literacy and numeracy with the younger clients that I used to have, often too easy to think that just because someone was 16 that they would be able to be literate and numerate to your expectations, for example. And sometimes you have to check yourself that and really understand that, really using a real object, for example, could help you.
Rather than a written explanation or something.
Yeah, and often acting out something, showing someone how to use a phone when they couldn't. This was, probably more without the mobile phones, but often it was just showing them where the finger went for the number. They didn't have to understand the numbers themselves. Yeah,
okay, that's a really interesting example. I'll put that down here in your thing. All right, so we've got some really good comprehensive answers there. You've covered a few major ones which obviously you've dealt with in the past and could very well be relevant here. The strategies which you've provided as examples of how to overcome those barriers are pretty good as well, obviously with the hearing aids and the clear speaking and gesturing so that people can understand you. And you obviously have the thought process there of how can I change my presentation to suit that person better. So that's really good. You've obviously indicated a lot of thought there. And if I just check off the last of these little tabs on my benchmark data, that is the end of today's assessment. 3 questions, well done and covered comprehensively. Given the answers in the benchmark marking guide, you have answered sufficient evidence to demonstrate your understanding of these 3 knowledge topics, which means that you are deemed to be competent. Your prior learning that you have presented as evidence here for me today allows me to make the assessment decision that you are competent in this role. You are competent in this unit of BSBCMM201, Communicate in the Workplace.
Oh.
So congratulations, you have now completed both of those assessments, and I will be able to send you out your statement of attainment. One thing I will just recap is that I have been through the marking guide here. You have covered a sufficient number of different organisational policies and plans according to this marking guide. You have provided a minimum of 3 examples of different communication styles and where you will use them. And they were really good, obviously examples that you have employed in your previous work primarily, but also here. And your, as I say, your strategies for dealing with those different potential barriers to communication were very appropriate and effective, so that's great. The evidence you have provided meets with the principles of assessment in that it is valid, reliable. We've developed this flexible solution or flexible package to suit you, and it's fair. You haven't required any reasonable adjustments,
No.
but the recognition of prior learning process has been basically chosen to suit you the best. And the evidence you have provided to me today for this tool is valid as per the assessment mapping matrix that we worked through before, which links each of these questions back to specific parts of that unit of competency.
Yeah.
It's also current. We've talked about examples here and also in your recent previous employment. It's sufficient in that you have dealt with all of those points which are covered off in each of those sections, and it's authentic because I'm talking to you about this directly, so I can see that these are your experiences. We've also, as I say, we've signed off on all of those different competencies, which is fantastic, and we've looked specifically at your job role environment and the different skills required for that. So once again, I'm satisfied to judge your knowledge as sufficiently demonstrated to assess you as competent for this oral assessment, which with the portfolio of evidence you provided means you are now fully signed off for this Communicate in the Workplace. I'll send you through a statement of attainment within 7 days, probably realistically tomorrow when I go back to work. And I'll send through all of that information also to Jilly, and that will be held on your personal file and your training records here at Queanbeyan High School, and similarly at Training Solutions in accordance with the relevant policies. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for taking part in this. All the best. I hope you enjoy your new job.
I'm sure I will.